Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Their pharmacists are here to help you and your family stay protected, offering a wide range of vaccines, including flu shots and COVID-19 boosters. Stop into the store or schedule online at safeway.com/pharmacy. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
After weeks of speculation about Coach Prime's health, Buff fans finally got some good news. At a news conference yesterday, he told the media that he's now cancer-free after doctors removed tumors from his bladder.
If you see porta potty on the sideline, it's real, okay? I'm just telling you right now, you're going to see it. You're going to see the practice, you're going to see one.
We've all been there, Coach. We've all been there. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. Coming up, a story that Congressman Gabe Evans told on the campaign trail comes into question.
It says he was arrested for attempted burglary and released.
Then, disability advocates in Denver are concerned about changes to a popular RTD program.
Passing these things are going to cause significant harm to our community.
And how beloved Colorado tree could help slow wildfires.
We do know pretty darn well that it will likely slow it or at least alter those fires' effects.
It's Tuesday, July 29th. Here's the news in Colorado Today. Immigration records from nearly a century ago show that the story Congressman Gabe Evans tells about his family, that his grandfather came to this country the legal way, isn't true, or at the very least, incomplete.
I've told the story of my abuelito a few times. He raised his right hand in 1943 to join the army and fight in the European theater in World War II for his adopted country.
2 Purple Hearts in World War II, fighting with Patton's Third Army on the Western Front.
And in office, Evans has voted to support Trump's mass deportation policy. Reporter Chase Woodruff from Colorado Newsline wanted to know more details about Evans' grandfather's real story. First, Chase, why did you go after these records?
Congressman Evans is a pretty strong supporter of Trump's mass deportation policies, and he has defended those policies in large part by heavily leaning on the story that he has told about his grandfather.
Okay, and can you walk me through what you found?
We submitted a request over a year ago now in June of 2024, and it took almost a year to get those back from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. What we got back, it's called an AR2 form. It was prepared in 1941, and it showed that Evans' grandfather had entered the country illegally and lived for the next 12 years as what today we would call undocumented, living in El Paso, Texas for that time, and was subsequently arrested for an immigration violation, which led to this form being filled out. And on that form, it listed a prior arrest for attempted burglary when he was a teenager.
An arrest for attempted burglary. That is interesting because Evans has consistently used his grandfather as a contrast to people that he says should be deported, like people with criminal records. So why do you think the discovery of these records is important?
To be clear, the only surviving information, at least that I've been able to discover, is what's on this form. It says he was arrested for attempted burglary and released. The case didn't stick, and that's why he was released. What matters, of course, is currently under the Trump administration's policies, merely being charged with a crime like burglary or other property crimes, even shoplifting, that's enough to get you prioritized for detention by ICE. There was a policy change in the Laken-Riley Act, which was passed earlier this year. Congressman Evans voted for that. He's been supportive broadly of detaining folks on the basis of a criminal charge, not necessarily a criminal conviction. And what this document shows is his grandfather received due process. His grandfather received a chance to continue living in the country.
After your story came out last week, our Washington reporter, Caitlin Kim, pulled Evans aside at the U.S. Capitol. At the time, he said he hadn't read it, and when she described the findings in the story, he told her,
I think I've always talked about doing it the right way, which is in reference to the fact that he joined the military, served his country.
And she asked about his grandfather's arrest.
You're trying to relitigate something that happened in the 1940s. I mean, the facts stand for themselves. which was that he joined the military when he was 18, did the service that we talked about, and then as a result of all of that service, honorably discharged from the military, granted his citizenship.
Now, to be clear, the pathway his grandfather took to join the military in order to gain citizenship, that no longer exists. Did Evans or his staff say anything to you to clarify his stance and reconcile what is in his family's records?
They didn't answer many of the questions that we asked him and his team prior to publication of our story. The thing they said to us was, well, maybe it wasn't the 100% legal way, but it was still the right way in a broader sense. And, I think he is accurately describing a feeling that folks have who may be second or third generation and feel that their family did it the right way. So I think people feel that way. It's a separate question, right, whether that's true, whether the facts support that.
Evans is also championing a bill that would offer people who are working and have been in the country since before 2021 a way to stay legally if they don't have any criminal records and agree to pay a large fee. So what is the fallout of this development on that?
Yeah, I think the main thing to say is that the Dignity Act that Congressman Evans is a co-sponsor of now, it falls very far short of what allowed both Representative Evans' grandfather and all of his siblings eventually attained citizenship through various means. The Dignity Act, it offers no pathway to citizenship for anybody, and it does allow for permanent legal status for folks who are in the country unlawfully. But any way you look at it, that is far short of what the measures that allowed his family 80 years ago to acquire citizenship.
Colorado Newsline's Chase Woodruff, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thanks for having me.
You can read Chase's reporting at the link in our show notes. Disability advocates in Denver are sounding the alarm about proposed changes to a popular paratransit program. RTD is federally required to offer paratransit services, and Access-a-Ride is the basic safety net for people with disabilities who can't get to a bus or rail stop and need a ride. But some of the rules around how the service is used can make it difficult for people who actually use it. The service must be booked in advance, and pickups must be close to RTD lines and are only available during standard service hours. That can be limiting, says Jamie Lewis, transit advisor for the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. He says riders also often experience delays.
If you were to gain employment or you're trying to drop your child off at school, having a vehicle showing up 30 minutes late or an hour late or sometimes an hour and a half late doesn't exactly help your day go by nicely.
Then, several years ago, RTD piloted Access on Demand. It works kind of like an Uber or Lyft. Participating rideshare and taxi companies help qualifying riders get to and from where they need to go without having to book in advance or be near a particular spot. RTD subsidizes the costs.
All of a sudden, it gave them personal freedom, taking their own children to school without having to depend on a neighbor or something like that. So it really, really was a successful program.
But it's been so successful that spending on the program has ballooned. And since last year, RTD has considered proposals to bring the costs down. Officials have cited an imminent budget shortfall. Tonight, board members are expected to vote on the changes, including charging riders $6.50 per ride and reducing the amount that RTD chips in. Lewis says that would price many people out of the program.
Going from $0 to $6.50 is just totally unacceptable.
Getting kids to and from school, plus a work commute, could leave people with a $26 a day commute. The timing of the RTD vote is also raising eyebrows. It comes days after the nation marked the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act and ahead of RTD's own celebration of the landmark civil rights law. Plus, board members are expected to weigh in on another proposal tonight, whether to rename a major downtown transit station after Reverend Wade Blank. Blank was a key figure in the disability rights movement. He led a group of activists known as the Gang of 19. In July 1978, those 19 wheelchair users brought downtown Denver's traffic to a standstill by using their bodies to block 2 city buses for roughly 24 hours. They demanded accessible transit as they chanted, "We will ride."
It's definitely not lost on us.
This is Brian Grewe. He's the executive director of Atlantis Community, which Wade Blank co-founded.
That there's a level of irony that 50 years later, we're still battling the same battles to ensure that our community has equitable access.
Atlantis is one of the groups planning a demonstration outside RTD's offices before tonight's vote. Grewe says it's important that the board members see the faces of some of the people who would be impacted by these changes.
Hopefully it shows them that, this isn't the right side of history to be on right now. Because passing these things are going to cause significant harm to our community.
An RTD spokesperson declined a CPR interview request, saying the agency needs to hold off until the board takes action on the changes. Can you imagine planting a tree to stop a fire? A new study found that aspen trees can actually slow down wildfires, and some officials are planting whole aspen forests to stop their spread. Colorado Matters Western Slope reporter Tom Hess reported on the study. Tom, aspen trees are a pretty quintessential part of Colorado's scenery, but slowing down wildfires, that's pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, aspens come with a lot of qualities that make them resistant to fires, at least compared to other trees. And some of these aren't going to be a huge surprise. They're wetter, they tend to be in wetter areas, but they also have this self-pruning effect where they'll drop their branches as they grow up, and their leaves are just not as flammable as, say, pine needles are. And that's something I talked to Matt Harris about. He's a forest fire researcher at Western Colorado University in Gunnison, and he was the lead author on this new study.
Let's think about a spruce, right, where you have this perfect ladder structure with all of these fine needles, and it even has a flammable resin. It is just made to burn, right? Fire is going to flute right up it. There's all these fine fuels to consume really fast.
And how did Harris and his team figure all of this out?
So scientists actually kind of had an understanding of aspen's resilience to fire for a long time. In the past decades, they'd noticed that wildfires that burned thousands of acres would barely creep into aspen forests. But those were pure aspen forests, for lack of a better term. Harris and his team of scientists were curious about what happens when a fire burned through areas with more diverse vegetation.
But I got to actually sit there and actively watch a fire move through the conifers and meet on this ridgeline with a large aspen stand and just drop from the crowns down into the understory and kind of fizzle out within, 30 feet. And it was just incredibly impressive to see.
They looked into about 2 decades worth of fire data from Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and they tracked how fast fires would spread day after day, and then they would cross-reference historical data of what vegetation was in the area. They found that if at least a quarter of the forest is made up of aspen trees, the speed that fire would spread went down by almost half.
Almost half? Wow, so it's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, and that was pretty exciting because there's also this linear effect to it, meaning that the more aspen trees there are in the forest, the slower the spread.
So what are Harris and his team planning to do with all this new information? Are we now going to see a bunch of aspen trees planted everywhere in Colorado?
Well, as you can imagine with scientific research, going from the paper to what you're going to do with it in practice has a few extra steps. But there are some places that are looking to slow wildfires using these types of trees. There's a town in the Yukon area of Canada that is looking to create a natural, they call it a green fire break, around the entire town by planting more than 400,000 deciduous trees like aspens.
I always have to throw the caveat, right? We cannot say that an aspen stand is going to stop a fire from running into your house, from running into a city. But we do know pretty darn well that it will likely slow it or at least alter those fires' effects. And, in those emergency situations, that can be a really big deal.
CPR's Tom Hess. Thank you so much, Tom.
You're welcome.
Reporting for today's show came from CPR's Stephanie Wolf. Follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Pérez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can make back to school a breeze. Shop lunch essentials, snacking favorites, and even check off vaccinations all in one trip. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.